The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, we can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Well, again, it's good to see you all here today on this, our annual festival memorial honoring Great Master Keizan. And I'll just talk a little bit about his life and importance to our tradition. Many of you know this, but maybe some of you haven't heard of him, so bear with me if I'm repeating things that you know. And of course, Great Master Keizan is considered the mother of Soto Zen, our particular lineage. So we have usually in any scrolls representing the Soto Zen lineage in Japan, you have Shakyamuni Buddha in the center, Great Master Dogen on the left side. Actually, if I were the Buddha, Dogen would be on the right and Keizan on the left. So yeah, if you're looking at the image, Dogen on the left, Keizan on the right. So Dogen being the father of Soto Zen and Keizan being the mother of Soto Zen. Dogen brought the teaching to Japan of the Zaodong tradition from China and of course broke ground there with it, and yet he struggled a great deal to make it popular, but definitely established it. Was a little more puritanical about it. Great Master Keizan had the ability to, as Reverend Master Mann referred to in her dedication of the ceremony, to popularize Soto Zen in Japan, and had the great skill of making everyone feel welcome in the tradition. You know, it used to, at one point, Zen teachings, many Buddhist teachings were really only available to people who were literate. Not everyone was literate in Japan. This was in the 1200s, 1268 Keizan was born, and also only to the people in the courts, the nobility, you know, a select number of people. And so gradually the Soto Zen tradition made Buddhism much more available to the common person, often called Farmer Zen because it was accessible to everybody, not just, no matter what your class. And on top of that, Great Master Keizan, I'll mention at the beginning, was also very radical in that he taught women literacy. You know, many women in ordinary society in Japan were not literate, they couldn't read and write. And he encouraged that, taught, and so that they could read the scriptures and fully participate in the ceremonies and in the Dharma teachings, understand them. So we have a lot to thank him for. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about him. We have this lovely cartoon story Reverend Master Jiyu got from Japan. We have one of for Dogen and Keizan. She photocopied it. I'll show it to the camera. And translated all the Japanese into English, you know, reading from right to left, of course. And so I've got a bit of history from what is recorded in that and what we know about Keizan. Let's see, I'll arrange my books here. So born in 1268, Great Master Keizan was named Gyosho by his mother at birth, which means true going. Apparently she had birth to him while she was on a walk, and he suddenly came out. And so since it was all part of the movement, she called him true going. She was a Buddhist and very devoted to the 11-headed Kanzeon, the Bodhisattva of great compassion. And we happen to have an image of that Bodhisattva here, which you don't see very often. I found this in Chinatown many years ago and gave it to the abbot's house. And here you have a Kanzeon with holding a vase of water, which are holding the water of the spirit, the water of compassion. And on her head, you have 10 heads and then another head on top. It's kind of interesting. And traditionally, it's kind of hard to see on here, but usually each face has a little bit different expression. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. So she was very devoted to this particular form of Kanzeon, bodhisattva of compassion. And so her son developed also a great affinity with this bodhisattva as he grew up. As a young child, he even sculpted, I think at age 3, sculpted a clay statue of Kanzeon, apparently. And he regularly joined his mother in recitation of the Kanzeon scripture, so he would have known that from a very young age by heart, in front of their altar with this large 11-headed Kanzeon statue. So this statue, as I find it a helpful reflection. Traditionally, there are, happy faces, quiet, calm faces, sometimes angry, sometimes very sad faces, perhaps distracted faces, you name it, in all the various states of mind that we go through, depicted in the faces traditionally, and the one at the top being very still and very calm. And to my mind, as I see it, this represents what Kanzeon does, as described in the Scripture of Great Wisdom. Kanzeon sees through all thoughts and things and feelings to the heart, to the pure heart of everything, to the pure heart of all states of mind, for that matter, by remaining still, by not becoming attached to the various states, not turning them into a cause for creating a separate self or a selfishness, seeing to the heart, the pure heart of all conditions. Not easy, but this is Kanzeon's training, and this is what we do with our meditation. So she shows how to cultivate the equanimity and the compassion of pure meditation. We can see to the heart of our own experience when we are experiencing the various states, however difficult or however blissful. There is that at the heart of it, which doesn't judge, which holds it all, which all of which is permeated completely with compassion. Doesn't mean that there are not things that are not to be done. Those might become apparent, but we can't effectively deal with them unless we are seeing very clearly through them with that pure compassion. So this was a very important image in Great Master Keizan's upbringing and affected him. He had visions of it at many times later in his life that guided him in various ways. And for us, whether you're a Buddhist or not, this represents universal great compassion. It's something that is just there. We can't really do anything about it. It's just, there's no way you can fully damage it, but it does take training to begin to tap into it, to begin to realize it, and certainly to actualize it, to bring it into our daily thought, speech, and behavior. And thus, this aspect of pure meditation is a theme of Great Master Keizan throughout his life and his teaching. He expressed a wish to become a monk at a very young age. He apparently had quite a temper, as the offertory that we heard this morning spoke of. Very determined young fellow. And even at the age of 3, he expressed this interest, apparently. But his father forbade it and did not, was not happy with him. And at one point, apparently, young Yosho went on a hunger strike, decided he would fast and not eat until his parents gave in to his wishes, which they eventually did. At one point when he was very little, apparently he didn't eat for 3 days. So finally, at the age of 8, he entered a monastery for training and was eventually ordained as a novice monk when he was 13. And he trained under Master Tetsu Gikai in our lineage. When we chant the ancestral line, of course, he's there. There's Eihei Koso Dogen, Master Kowo-Nijo, and then Tetsu Gikai was Kowo-Nijo's disciple. And also, Keizan had the great opportunity to nurse Master Kowo-Nijo before he died. He was still alive when Keizan entered the monastery and died soon afterwards. In the course of his training, as was the custom for young monks in those days, this is the 1200s, we're talking about early 1300s, He traveled to a couple of other temples for his unsui training. The word unsui means cloud and water, so the training of becoming like the clouds and like water. In other words, learning to let go of selfishness, let go of our strong attachments that create harmful karma, learning to flow, accept, be patient with things, respond from that place of patience and stillness. So the unsui, the cloud and water image, is how we think of ourselves when we enter monastic training, but really everybody has to do that if they're going to train successfully. And it helps to have those visual images, I think. I like visual images, like, okay, am I behaving like a big rock in the way of things, or am I behaving like the water that flows over it and around it? Am I making things into an obstacle, or am I able to just go around it and bow to it and keep going, right? So those images, I think, are very helpful. So during the course of his unsui training, he was given increasing responsibility as a meditation hall monitor and so on. As he went up the ranks a little bit in the priesthood, he was still a novice monk. Eventually, after some time of that training, he returned to his master's temple to continue training with him under Master Tetsu, as I mentioned. And by this time, he was in his early 20s and eventually received the Dharma transmission by Master Tetsu and was given increasing responsibility and teaching responsibility, overseeing monastic trainees, as he was obviously becoming very skilled. Stayed with his master and nursed him when he was very ill, and stayed with him until he died. Eventually, he just did become a very popular teacher, so he was asked to go to other temples to teach. And at some point later in his training, he had a vision of this kanzeon, his kanzeon, offering him a temple. And soon after that, someone came to him and offered him to become abbot, asked him to become abbot of Soji Temple, which is the temple at which Reverend Master Jiyu trained in Tsurumi near Tokyo. So that became his temple, and Dogen, of course, started Eiheiji. Keizan did train at Eiheiji a bit in the beginning. Yeah. So at that time, Soji then became the head temple of the Soto Church. And now both Eiheiji and Sojiji are the joint head temples of the Soto Zen Church in Japan. So a little history there. In his old age, Keizan, I guess, he and Dogen actually died in their 50s. I think he did die when he was about 58, Keizan. And as his health was failing, he left. Soji went back to his old temple, and also he did ordain female monks, which is also rather radical at that time. He was training some female monks. So a little bit about Keizan. And as I say, he was able to popularize Soto Zen, make it more available, accessible to ordinary people, as Reverend Master Mayan mentioned, and also in the offertory mentioning developing ceremonies, ways for people to come together and practice together. Apparently, ordinary people, farmers, really looked forward to going to his ceremonies, and as the offertory says, also pointing to how the ceremony of everyday life can have, our daily lives can have a heavenly meaning. In other words, the bringing out the nobility of human life. Ceremonies for us are kind of model or template, really, for training in daily life. They're not magical things. They're times when we can come together, learn how to harmonize with each other, recognize each other's sincere aspiration. Of course, we hear teachings during them, and we voice those teachings. We transfer merit during them, and so it's very, very helpful to, showing us how we can do things in daily life. We can work on the ceremony of harmonizing with others in daily life through just listening more, through practicing patience, sympathy, benevolence, charity, and so on. So, of course, one of the perhaps well-known stories, if you've heard it before, you may have heard this, and it was also mentioned in the offertory, about his terrible temper when he was a young fellow, Great Master Keizan. And so let's just talk a little bit about how he converted his anger and how we can do that ourselves. And Kanzeon, of course, shows the way to that by letting go of judgments. Often when we're in situations where we have no control over something, anger may arise, fear may arise, often anger coming out of fear or out of sadness. And so a big part of our reason for meditation is learning how to develop equanimity and stillness so that we can see through and see what really matters, and see that we are, what we have to let go of. Well, Great Master Keizan, at one point when he was still an unsui, before he was transmitted, he was given more responsibility in the monastery, as I mentioned, and he, was very zealous disciplinarian. Unfortunately, he became a little overzealous and sometimes felt he had to punish those who were falling asleep during meditation or, becoming slack in their practice. And so he could be rather harsh. He was very keen himself, perhaps a little on the ascetic side of his training. And there's the story, of course, of how he he found one of the monks sleeping, and how he almost beat the monk with his kyosak. The kyosak is what we call the sword of Buddhist wisdom. It's a long stick. If you've been to some Zen monasteries, you might have seen them in Japan, China as well. The disciplinarian would walk around during meditation with holding this wooden stick, and if somebody were falling asleep, they might tap the monk on the shoulder or the trainee on the shoulder to wake them up. We started to use a kyosak in our very early years here because it's in our tradition, and it was only used when we actually asked for it. So we're sitting facing a wall and we're asking for it, and there's a tap on the shoulders which can help release shoulder tension and wake you up a little. But at one point, some years after we started here, Reverend Master Jiyu decided not to use the kyosak, the stick, anymore. She felt that just, Westerners tended to be a little afraid of it, felt judged by it perhaps. In the end, she felt that we could discipline ourselves and wake ourselves up, and just handed that responsibility over to us. So she put the kyosak on the altar and left it there. So it's there, but we have to do the work. So we abandoned that practice here in this monastery. I'm sure they might still use it in other monasteries, but she saw a lot of examples, as happened with Keizan, where it was perhaps sometimes misused by overzealous disciplinarians. Yeah, so here's Keizan about to give this young monk who's sleeping, a beating, and just as he is about to do that, he has this vision of his mother, and his mother says to him, "You've become a clever and excellent training monk, Gyosho. However, one's enthusiasm as a training monk is not necessarily the same as another's, or all people's enthusiasm. Other people don't necessarily need yours. To insist is to be compulsive. One's own honest madness is one thing. However, we must not condemn others." A mother's advice, yeah. And he was very close to his mother. So she appeared to him as almost an emanation of Kanzeon. She would say to him in the past, "Truly, even if there is only a little of this underlying compassion, it is still good. Always partake of it, always lean towards it. Have you forgotten that I said much the same thing to you in front of Kanzeon Bodhisattva on the day you left home?" So here he sees his mother, and he immediately wakes up to what he's doing. and he begins to have a major conversion. The stories show him crying and letting go of his gyosak, and the monk who he was about to beat is like, what's going on with this guy? And he says, I've been greatly mistaken. So he has a major conversion. Apparently, from that point on, he changed his ways. And of course, when he gets back to the temple after his Unsui training, he has a meeting with his master, and his master asks him, have you fulfilled your birth wish? Were you not a bad-tempered person before you did your Unsui training? And he says, yes, my mother showed the fact clearly to me in a dream or a vision. And his master says, if a person's resolution to cleanse his heart is to lead to enlightenment, then the gentleness of the Buddha must be shown at the time of calling to account all evil demons and passions. And that means within ourselves or with others. And Keizan admits, yes, I forgot that sort of heart. So his master encourages him to continue with that. And eventually he grew in his training. Yeah. And became a very, very good teacher. So it's a good example of how you can actually really convert these things, and how by remembering the compassion, universal compassion, by just turning your mind and heart towards patience, to sympathy, you can let go of those angry passions, those angry impulses. Yeah, and of course, doesn't mean that there are, maybe things that or beings that need help, but how can we really help? There are many examples in our world of how anger meeting anger just seems to complicate things and make them much worse. And so we can use those examples to help us see what is not good to do. So, yeah, he became known as someone with a very gentle heart, approachable, someone who could make the teachings make sense to ordinary people. And we have a lot to thank him for in this. To this day, our Reverend Master Jiyu very much continued in that tradition. Eventually, as I mentioned, Keizan went from Sojiji. One of his disciples, Master Gasan, was made abbot by Keizan, and he went to another temple where another disciple of his, the one in our lineage, Meiho Sotetsu, I think, where he was, and that's the one that we chant every morning, and spent the rest of his life with him. So Keizan was also, as Reverend Master Mayon mentioned this morning, a writer of very deep teachings. One of the best known is his instructions on how to do pure meditation and his Denkoroku. The Denkoroku, as many of you know, is his history, although it's not all absolutely historically accurate, but a kind of intuitive spiritual history of the training of the monks in our lineage, beginning with Shakyamuni Buddha and all the way through the Indian ancestors, the Chinese ancestors, up to the time of Dogen. It ends with actually Dogen's disciple, Koho Nicho. And so it's stories of their early years of training and their particular koan, their particular spiritual conundrums, what they were dealing with. And it shows how each ancestor, each master, each monk was really very ordinary in many ways, not so different from us, and how they struggled with all kinds of things, and how they converted their greed, anger, delusion, how they realized the truth, how they came to enlightenment, how they came to pass on the teaching. So, it's a wonderful, certainly recommend it. For me, it's one of the most encouraging texts that we have. So don't understand all of it, I have to admit, but Keizan has a way of bringing out just the depth of Buddha nature in a way that is profound and also very poetic, and I find just incredibly encouraging. So if you ever want to get encouraged, you're feeling doubtful about your practice, you need some help, you might pick this up and just read a little passage of it. Years ago, I think it was Reverend Master Mifanwe or someone made a little booklet, which we still have a few copies of, and she extracted all the, and I don't know if it was her, for some reason her name comes to mind, all the poems. At the end of each of the chapters in the Dankoroku is a succinct little poem where Keizan summarizes some of the teaching from the particular chapter. And she extracted all those poems and made them into a little booklet. So that's also a real treasure. And if anybody wants a copy, I'm sure we can get you a copy of those. So, and then his instructions to pure meditation. So I thought I'd just read a little bit from Keizan's instructions on pure meditation. As the monks, in a few days, we're going into our monastic retreat, our spring retreat. In our tradition, often it's called the Denkoe retreat, when the Dankoroku is studied, or if not specifically, we certainly are studying and entering into deeper meditation. And so I think Keizan's teaching on pure meditation will be very apt at this time, and perhaps you can join us while we're closed and sitting in meditation in contemplation of this aspect of Keizan's teaching. And of course the meditation is really the cure for indulgence, for temper, anger, all these things, ultimately along with the guidance of the precepts. Well, here he says about the samadhi which all the Buddhas employ to their delight. It's also called the samadhi that is the Lord of Samadhis, as we chanted this morning, the most excellent mirror samadhi. If even for a little while you reside contented within this samadhi, within your meditation, then straightway you will open your spiritual eye and clarify what your mind really is. Know well that this is indeed the right gate to Buddhahood. If you are desirous of clarifying what your mind really is, let go of all your deluded, discriminatory knowledge and explanations, opinions, views, and so on. Just let them go. Put aside the teachings of the world and the teachings of the Buddha. Cut yourself free from all false and deluding opinions and sentiments. When you manifest the true nature of the one reality, the clouds of doubt and delusion that have accumulated will disperse, and the moon of your original nature will once again shine clear and bright. And this is another theme that Keizan works into many of the chapters in the Dankoroku. He uses all sorts of terms for Buddha nature. One of the ones he uses most frequently is original nature, one reality, original mind, or the moon of our original nature. The Buddha said, should you, upon hearing the Dharma, ponder on its meaning, you are still as one outside the gate. To come back straightway to pure meditation is to calmly sit within the house. So this is how we do it. How true this is. And just as with that, quote, hearing and pondering, likewise all your opinions are still not yet put to rest. Your mind is still hindered by attachments. Thus you are as one sitting outside the gate. So just do pure meditation, and all will relax and come to rest. This is something he emphasized a lot. There's this appropriate striving within meditation. There's no place where you will not then penetrate. Therefore, you will resemble one who returns home and sits in peace. So that's very encouraging, yeah. Because we often feel we have to be doing something heroic, something special. Just coming back to the pure meditation. And an aspect of that is seeing as Kanzeon does through all the various states of mind that arise. So that's what we're going to be working on in the next week or so. And that is what I have to say today. I might just end with another one of my favorite passages, of which I have many in the Denkaroku. And this is the poem at the end of the chapter on Great Master Bodhidharma's master, Hanyatara. And it said, of course, that she was in fact a woman, a female monk, although, in the Chinese and Japanese translations, and often, and of course in the Chinese they don't use pronouns the same way that we do, so everybody, when translated into English, is thought to be male, but in fact there were female ancestors. And apparently Reverend Master Koten has done some research, and even in southern India, there's an area where Master Hanyatara is known to be a female monastic. So that's an interesting fact, isn't it? And of course, one of Great Master Bodhidharma's main disciples was a woman as well. So here's his poem at the end of her chapter and her teaching to Bodhidharma. Those many years ago, this would have been 500s, I guess. He always starts, Keizan, these little poems by saying something like this: I have some humble words which try to discern what is happening in the foregoing account. Do you all wish to hear them? The light of the moon, reflected in the depths of the pool, is bright in the sky. The appearance of the water, as it flows toward the horizon, is thoroughly clear and pure. Even though you trawl through it, capitalized, again and again, knowing full well that it does exist, it is so spacious and empty, yet discoverable everywhere, that any attempt to grasp it is completely futile. So there's a clue for what to do in your meditation, and with all the troubles that we are experiencing in this world as well.